what happened? These guys took almost 10 years. 1963 only they present the report, and with the help of that, we have the next very famous commission, the Kothari Commission, Bishop was referring to in his inaugural address. My dear teachers and others who are participating, please remember, this is a very, very important, significant contribution of Kothari Commission. Today, I can tell you 80 to 90% of this recommendation, which has come in the form of NEP 2020, it is taken from Kothari Commission. I can tell you without any apprehension, without any hesitation. So I like to draw your attention. He was the UGC chairman, and he spent a lot of time. Along with it, it took almost 2 to 3 years, studied the system thoroughly, and with his help, we get the first education policy in 1968, you are aware. I just, for our own recollect, I like to bring before you few recommendations we need to remember, because when I discuss, elaborate the NEP 2020, you need to know the background. Kothari Commission, some of the important recommendation is, they introduce what they call suggested common school system with the neighborhood school. Remember, if you go to Delhi, if you want to seek admission in the entry point, the neighborhood school policy is already employed there. They realize that neighborhood children should be given much more important. So the proximity should be an important criteria for entering into the schools at the entry point. That is why we have the neighborhood school policy today. Then they also very important. Please remember, some of them think that only this policy has recommended 6% of GDP. It is right from Kothari Commission. And they realize, they said, unless whatever government may be at the center, they make a political economic commitment in terms of allotment of finance, nothing can happen. That is why, please remember, at present, though it is said 4.4% GDP is allotted for, in my opinion, I am told it is less than 3%. You can be sure. You can counter check it, my claim. So when you are not consciously, willingly allotting money needed fund for education, you cannot expect a transformation. So the NEP 2020 also envisions that government is willing to spend 6% of GDP. If it happens, and I will be the happiest person, and all of you will agree that we need that significant amount for transforming education. And the third thing is, they talk about the democratic values. They realize education without values is nothing, because India did not want simply intellectual monsters. We wanted good human being with compassionate heart, with understanding mind. What is needed is good human being. Before becoming a good engineer, become a good human being. That was a dream of Kothari Commission and some of the forefathers. That is why they said the democratic values, the universal values should be emphasized among the children. And they also very strongly believed that the fundamentals, at least up to class 5, which is proposed by 2020, the children should learn their fundamental in the local language and try to familiarize with what you call the regional language, etc. Like as a North Indian, we are comfortable. I'm a Tamilian, but still I am very comfortable. I have learned Hindi. So though I have learned Hindi, but nothing like expressing one's own, the fundamental ideas in my own mother tongue. The way I will be able to express myself in Tamil will be much better, superior than if I try to express in Hindi. That's why they are saying promoting regional language. Later on, this NEP takes that at least up to class 5, the fundamental, what we call the formative period, children should learn, grasp in their own mother tongue. We will see later. I will critiquing about this a little later. What are some of the other recommendations? Science education, vocationalization, work experience, integrative work with education, etc. The same recommendation were already found in Kothari Commission. And as I told you, 1975, please remember, is very important here, and education is brought under concurrent list. So now it is a responsibility of both state and the center to work together in collaboration to make educational sector a transforming sector. But how, I will see, keep that in mind. In the afternoon when I am critiquing how the concurrent character is going to be underplayed or minimized, compromised. I'll talk about this one. Though they try to maintain it, but the importance of concurrent characteristic will be slowly minimized. At least attempts are being made in the NAP 2020 I'll be talking about. The second education policy, 1986, talks about what you call 10+2 3, which was existing now, it is now, and whereas this policy will be proposing paradigm shift, which I will be talking about later. Okay, this is 1992. So please remember, 1986, the second education policy came. It took almost 6 years for them to frame action-oriented approach. So that's why in 1992 only the second education policy takes its root. And that's why I'm confident. If you ask me, though government is claiming they have approved, cabinet approved, some of you may be wondering, is it going to be implemented next year or 2022? I don't think so. Please remember, it needs time. It needs consultation. Why? Because now the intellectual will sit together, formulate a curriculum, prepare textbook, and prepare the curriculum framework, how to implement. It will take time. So in my opinion, before 2025, concretely, nothing is going to happen, except they may make an attempt to facial manner. Certain phases of recommendation can be done. Otherwise, I don't think immediately they will be able to do, because it needs time. It needs time for concretizing this education policy. And good to remember, now we are back again. We were known as, initially till 1992, Education Ministry was known as a Ministry of Education. Then 1992 till 2020, it was known as a Human Resource Development Ministry. Now we are back again to Ministry of Education. It is something like we say in our church circle or in our religious circle, one principal comes to build a building, one comes, the another one breaks it and make it bring back to the same structure again. So it is only a change of nomenclature. So Ministry of Education was changed to HRD and again back to. So President has given already a notification, and henceforth our HRD ministry will be known as a Ministry of Education. And I like to, all of you look at this, you are familiar with Professor Yashpal. Why it is very important? Like remember, he was in 1992 when the 1986 policy was being consulted and almost to be implemented. They sought his opinion, and he was brought into the advisory committee because he said education should become a joyful experience. Today, why children are not interested? There is a boring method, like Professor Jonas was talking about in the previous section. We need to make our learning a much more joyful experience. And that is our responsibility of the teachers and the principal. So he is very significant, and his recommendations are so to some extent are incorporated in this NEP 2020. So Professor Yashpal was a very famous scientist who died a few years back, and he brought in the dimension of learning without burden, learning with joy. So it is important, just mentioning to him because he has contributed his share. And another person in the journey of our historical note, I like to bring you this famous man, Unni Krishnan. He from Kerala. This Unni Krishnan judgment, 1990s, is very significant. Those who are familiar with the Constitution, you know, Article 21 talks about right to life. And this is a man who said, right to life does not become a significant unless it is incorporated with the right to education. Because it's only through education we can bring quality to life. This national education, somebody asks, sir, Prime Minister, why do you want to bring another policy 2020? They said the previous policies talked about equity and other thing and all. They did not talk about the quality of education. So through this, we want to bring quality to our Indian education. And Unni Krishnan knew this. That is how in Article 45, you realize that education becomes a significant because right to life becomes meaningful. Only right to education becomes a fundamental. And from here only, my dear teachers, fathers and sisters, remember, fundamental right to education is drawn from here. So Article 45 has acquired the status of fundamental right because of this famous judgment, Unnikrishnan judgment. And then you are all familiar. NCF in 2005, National Curriculum Framework, is important. Because a lot of people, I like to draw your attention here. This National Curriculum Framework 2005 is a fantastic, very liberative, very transformative. Why it did not bring the desired result? Because of our mindset. Remember, it is not enough that you bring out policies one after the other. What is more important is willingness to cooperate with the government, with the agencies to implement. We need to change our mindset. We need to change our attitude. We need to widen our perspective. Somehow, due to we go on with a beaten track. Lack of openness, whether it be a school education or higher education. That is why you see the next slide. Though they are making lot of recommendation like shift learning from rote method, overall development, integrative examination in the classroom, flexibility, child-centric education, and promote universal enrollment up to 14, and learning without burden, etc. See that red lines I have written, adopted in central run school like Kendriya Vidyalaya and Navodaya school and some state school, and others did not bother to implement this. As a result, our Indian education system remained the same. It is due to a lot of reasons: political interference, unwillingness. Even some of our leaders who are so-called educationist principle, in my opinion, they are not educated. They may have required degrees, but they are not educationists. That's why you see CCE, those who are working in CBSE school, how beautiful concept the UPA government brought in. Kapil Sibal as a minister, the continuous comprehensive evaluation. It, after a few years, it had a natural death because we did not prepare the ground. And the teachers did not take part, cooperate with that, with the government, due to various reasons. That is why even this policy, I have my own apprehension. Unless teachers cooperate with the government, with the management, nothing is going to happen. So it's very important to realize that we as teachers, we need to become proactive. Otherwise, it will be like a national curriculum framework 2005, few schools run over, others did not bother about. This all of you familiar, I'm not going to talk about. Right to free and compulsory education, you are all familiar. It became a law. I'm happy that it became a law in 2009. And we, as a Catholic school, got exempted through a Supreme Court ruling that unaided, aided Christian minority institutions are not covered by. That does not in any way hinder us from serving the poor. I like to reiterate fact, even before RTE, we were serving the poor. All our Catholic institutions, Christian institutions, poor they have been an integral part of our education. And I always say, if it is a Catholic institution, if the poor do not feel comfortable in our campus, it is not a Catholic institution. So we got exemption because we did not want interference from the government. We wanted to preserve the sanctity of Article 31 and 2. That is why. And even today, some of our school and serving the poor, and we will continue to serve the poor as long as our institutions exist. But you need to be aware. Then you may ask me, there is a debate going on. This RTE, does it strengthen this new education policy 2020? Is it strengthened or it is playing down RTE? There is a mixed reaction. I am not very sure. I have done various studies, attended various seminars. Still, I am not able to. But my take is on this, though they are mentioning, when we talk about education as per the NEP 2020, it is going to be from age 3 to 18, which means a child who enters from nursery till 12. And they say this midday meal program and all other will be applicable from age 3 to class 12, class nursery to class 12. But they are not talking about whether they will make it as amendment in the law and make it as a compulsory. They are talking about universalization of education. When we talk about children, right to education, it is from age 3 to 18. But there is no clear-cut policy. That's why some of the educationists are questioning why they are not in clear term saying this RTE, though it was from it was from 1 to 8. Now they should say it is extended from age 3 to 18, which means nursery to class 12, but we are not sure. We will talk about little later. This one I am not going to talk about because all of you know as per the RT1. Now we are entering to. So as I told you in my introductory remark, in 2016, when Mr. Narendra Modi took over as the Prime Minister of India, he realized that it is through educational sector we can transform our country. And he realized when he was working as the Chief Minister in Gujarat, certain lacunae in our system. So he called for T.S.R. Subramaniam, who was a former cabinet secretary, and he made 24 or 28 members. They came with a big, lot of recommendation. Unfortunately, that recommendation could not be accepted by the government because there was a hue and cry. When they published the draft, people came on street. And even people, South Indians all the way came to Delhi to protest against the draft. And finally, due to various pressure, the government withdrew and they formed another committee under the leadership of Dr. Kasturi Rangan, who was a former chairman of ISRO from Bangalore. And he, along with the other members, brought out the policy and submitted in 31st May 2019, and to which the cabinet gave approval on 30th July 2020. And this is a result of that. I like to mention, some of you may not know, when the draft was given, the Kasturi Rangan report involved 484 pages. Later on, and another committee, so they submitted the committee. I was told by one of the members, they formed a committee of a few members, and what we have in hand, the 66-page document, it is the latest document, which is the final given approval by the cabinet. So that is the historical background. Just to go through, I'm still in the first part. You see, we started with Dr. Kothari. Then we have 1968, Indira Gandhi government announces the first education policy. Then you have 1986, Rajiv Gandhi government, the second policy. Then under Narasimha Rao, we have 1992, 96, 86 becomes concretized in 92. Then you have 2005, under Manmohan Singh, we have a common minimum program, CMP we call it. Then 2016, under T.S.R. Subramaniam. Then 2019, you have Dr. Kasturi Rangan, whose photo you see, that Subramaniam is right side, is a former cabinet secretary. This is to give you the roadmap, what led to, because it's very important. The perspective is very important. We need to understand before we analyze. And this slide shows this policy is going to affect, look at the magnanimity of the people. You see, it is going to affect all of us. Look at here, 252 villages and 36, which includes union territories. And it's very important. That is why we are here this morning, I believe, to discuss, to reflect and see what way we can bring certain attention to the government through this policy. And just run through what are some of the key principles you like to know. Just have a look at it. I'm not going to say very good. That's why some of you must have already read. If you read the first 10-15 pages, it almost looks like you are reading a Bible, a Christian reading a Bible. So prayerful and so inclusive, so liberative, so transformative. That's why some of the principles articulated are respect for diversity, local context, equity and inclusion, community participation, use of technology, emphasize conceptual understanding, unique capabilities, promoting critical thinking and creativity, we'll talk about later, and etc. And these are some of the key principles mentioned in National Education Policy. Look at the vision, excellent vision, a system which contributes an equitable, vibrant knowledge society. Very important. Equitable means everyone has a right to for vibrant knowledge, quality education, etc. And develop a sense of respect towards the fundamental rights, the constitutional values, and bonding with a sense of loyalty, what we talk about patriotism, and also conscious awareness of one's role and a responsibility. So in another way, how do I become a contributing member? Not just I am born in India, so I'm Indian. What way you are contributing through your life and ministry? And I believe we as a Catholics are contributing our share to the well-being of the country through education. And then instill skills, values, etc. These are some other vision policy. And education policy with regard to school under 8 headings. If those who have read will know. So I've just for your reference, I have put them. And this also picturesquely, this all available in the internet. I have just put it few slides for you to put you on a right perspective. Now I am entering into. Please now pay attention. So far I was in the historical note. Now I am moving to what it contains. It's very important. What are some of the proposals? The first one is with regard to school education. So far we were having 10+2 system. Now they are proposing 5+3+3+4. Look at this. Look at this slide. The existing structure to my left, to my right, you see the 5 years are they call it formative years, divided into 2, preschool and Anganwadi, and then class 1 and 2. Then you have class 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 to 12. Look at next slide will give you, see here, very important. Pay attention to this. This slide is very important. And this is going to take place in our educational system, school sector, by at least by 2025. That's what they are visualizing. So the blue box, if you look at here, the 5 years divided into 2 parts. Anganwadi, as I told you, Balvatika, then 1 and 2. They call it this as a foundational period. Then you have the preparatory period, the green box, class 3, 4, 5. There they play discovery, activity-based, interactive, etc. And there will be introduction of 2 languages will be introduced. Now, when you come to the middle, which is class 6, 7, 8, that is where 2 things are going to happen. 3 language formula will come into effect and vocational training will be introduced this sector. I'll be talking about later. The golden box, which you see, the 4 years, 9, 10, 11, 12, which is divided into 8 semesters, where you will have a multiple entry, multiple exit system. I'll talk about that. So from 10+2, there is a paradigm shift, 5+3+3+4. Now, please remember, I like to couple of minutes on this. This ECCE, Early Childhood Care and Education, is a very important. People ask the question, why you want to bring children at the age of 3 to school? They cited an example. Look at Finland and Singapore, who are holding the top position with regard to school education for the last few years. And there, the entry point for children to enter into the school is at the age of 7. Till you reach age 7, you are supposed to be at home. At home. Mother and father will be your teachers. Your grandparents will be your mentors. Your brothers and sisters will be your companion to play with. So develop a soft skill, etc. When this question was raised, our Kasturi Rangan and others said, over 80% of a child's cumulative brain develops prior to the age of 6, they said. So to ensure that this development is put on play, so we need to provide a conducive atmosphere, conducive climate, what we call school climate. That is why we are bringing class 3 children into our formal educational sector. We will debate upon whether they are right or not. I'm just mentioning to you what is there. And they said it consists of flexible, multifaceted, multi-level, play-based activity, etc. They talked about. This you can read for yourself what is needed. So this slide is very important, you see. So this is the journey of a student. This is what envisioned by this. Later on, I'll be critiquing, was that a pure intention? What they are claiming to be? Because 85% of the cognitive dimension or the cumulative dimension of our brain takes place, development takes place, that's why I'm bringing. I do not think so. There seemed to be a hidden agenda. I'll talk about it later. But this is a journey which has been envisioned by starting right from age 3. And I'd like to draw your attention here. It is true. What they are claiming is the development of brain to a significant portion, it takes place at a very young age. Look at here, there are two segments, left brain, right brain. It's very important. The left brain is responsible for all this logical thinking related development. What they call the faculties. See that, developing curiosity, logical thinking, problem solving, art, craft, music, relationship with the nature, color, shape, alphabet. And look at the right side, go from bottom, the emotional development, etiquette, behavior, your own identity, the ethics, play-based discovery, based learning, and the teamwork and collaboration. And they said, if you want an because this National Education Policy 2020 aimed at a holistic development. That means there should be a balance between the two, left brain, right brain. And to do that, we need to provide a conducive atmosphere. That is why we are bringing the children right from age 3 to the formal school. That is a claim by the National Education Policy. Then another reason they suggested was why we are bringing children at a very young age, because the foundational literacy and numeracy development have to take place. It is urgent necessary because they say, look at the slide. Annual State of Education Report 2019 said 44.2% of class 5 government school can't read class 2 textbook. Can you imagine? And they are sitting in class 5, you give a textbook of class 2, they cannot read. And look at the second statement, 29.9% of class 3 could recognize numbers up to 9 only. They cannot count more than 9. Then the question is now, should we be happy with just the enrollment? Is there a desired output? We don't see. So in terms of numeracy and literacy, there's look at the next slide, is very alarming. You remember 2009 RTE came into an effect. It made as a fundamental right, education. Look at, but the enrollment, if you look at the bottom, the enrollment seemed to be increasing, the silver lining. But look at the other, from 2010, you go to 2016. In 2010, class 5 student who can read books meant for class 2 were 53.7%. After introduction of RTE 2009, look at here, what is the status? 2016, 47.8% only class 5 children could read class 2. So there is a decline. That's why you have to see RTE has not helped in many ways. That's why if the government was serious about transforming, you should have gone for an assessment, appraisal, bring in education aids. Why we have failed? Why we are providing in terms of law, in terms of support, why it has not brought a desired. And that in-depth study is missing from our approach. Look at the second one, the math skill. In 2010, the class 5 student could do the division, 36.2%. After introduction of RTE, look at here, 26%. So my dear fathers and sisters, this is very important to realize just enrollment alone is not going to help our children. We need to really see the desired outcome is obtained or not. And that can happen only through proper assessment and proper accompaniment. That is the important. And these are some of the recommendation details I've given. The third reason, important to realize, and this they said we are bringing out this NEP 2020, we want to curtail the dropout rates and ensuring universal access. They said by 2030, they want to make in the school level 100%. By 2035, they said from 26% to 50%, we want to make it in higher education. And you look at here, the gross enrollment ratio at the lower classes are much higher. But as you see, as they move towards 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, there is a significant dropout, which means there is a serious flaw in our educational system. We are not able to sustain our children. We are not able to retain our children. There are a lot of factors. I'm not blaming anyone. But as education is, we need to be aware. So they have cited, this is taken from one survey. They have, you can read for yourself. But there are much more serious reasons than just what we have prescribed in the data. You can see for yourself. And later on, I will see whether this national education policy will be able to curtail the dropout or not. I will critique that. I have a serious doubt because of the certain observation which I will be sharing with you after the lunch. And they said the goal I told you in the school education level, at least in the pre-school to secondary level, they want to make gross enrollment ratio 100%. Very good desire. If it happened, India will be one of the beautiful countries in the world. But I'm not sure. How do they want to do? Effective, sufficient infrastructure, tracking student, increase intake, existing school, etc. We will see whether it is true or not to come. I am very happy that they seem to be focused on what we call SCDGs, socio-economically disadvantaged group. What are the groups? Who are the components of this group? That is the female transgenders individuals, the gender identity, and they want to strengthen the socio-cultural identity, the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, very good idea, and minorities, the geographical identities, the children from rural belt. Because please remember, even today, 65% of our people, Indians, are living in village. So we cannot ignore the rural sector. If you want to empower India, we need to empower villages. If you want to transform India, you have to empower our village children, youngsters. Otherwise, nothing is going to happen. And also, we need to take in consideration the disabilities, learning disability. Due to various changing situation, we have various form of learning disabilities, which Dr. Jonas will know better, and I'm not going to talk about it, but you are, as educationists, you are aware. Then the socio-economic condition, the migrant laborers we are talking about today, and the low-income group, children in vulnerable situation. What I call it, people who are living in the periphery. And this education envision that can we bring them to the center. We will see whether they will achieve or not, but mention is there. The another fourth change they are bringing is, teachers, please remember, according to this policy, from 2025, no matter which board you belong to, children after class 3, 5, and 8, they will have to go through state school level examination. Only when you pass, you will be promoted to the next class. We will see. It is, in my opinion, it is in contradiction to RTE 2009. RTE says till 8th, no detention. No child should be. That's why we have no detention policy. No competitive exam. Because they realize children are not ready for any type of competition. Their mental framework is not strengthened by that age. But here you see, they are asking the child to take a state level examination. Maybe class 3 means the age must be how much? Must be 9, 10. So we will debate about is right or not. Then the another change they are bringing is semester system for class 9 to 12. So the 9 to 12, the 4 years will be divided into 8 semesters. Total 40 subjects, students to study 24 subjects, 5 are per semester, flexibility in taking exam. I will critique later. So these are some of the slides just to show you what will be some of the examination in grade 1 to 8. Then 9 to 12, you will be given a variety of, there will be a flexibility, multiple entry, multiple, etc. These are some of the slides given by Education Minister. I have just added just for our reference. Now, please remember, the existing board exam will continue. At the end, class 10 and 12 will continue. But a class 10 child, after completing 10, he can drop for a year and come back again for class 11. So there is a multiple entry, multiple exit system is there. And also you will see there is no tight compartment, like only science student has to opt for this type of subject. There is going to be a lot of flexibility. A physics a student, engineering student go for a finance, or a commerce student can go for some other totally not related to the subject. So there is a lot of freedom, flexibility is given to us. And you see the point number 6, there will be no separation of curricular, co-curricular, extracurricular henceforth. The whole thing will be called curricula. So everything will be amalgamated, integrated such a way in the curriculum that you will have no separation like you are taking part in curricular activity, co-curricular, extracurricular. That segregation will be no more there. And also, in terms of assessment, there is a lot of changes going to be. There is going to be the National Testing Agency. They are going to bring about high quality using artificial intelligence based software, etc. And the board exam will be more flexible with assessment, etc. So they are not only in terms of curriculum, also in terms of assessment, lot of transformation or lot of changes are expected. I'd like to draw your attention. They want to introduce vocational courses for classes 6, 7, 8. 15 courses compulsory. So in every year, that means in the span of 3 years, you will have each year 10 days of what we call bagless period. You will come and you will be exposed. No formal teaching will be there those days. And you will be taught carpentry, gardening, pottery, artisan by the local artists. But what is more important is my own intuition is, though indirectly saying it will be strengthened, but there is no clear-cut directive. After class 8, will they be made part of the curriculum for 9 to 12? Otherwise, it will be like, some of our school, foreign languages are introduced for class 6, 7, 8. Like in Xavier's, we have French along with the Sanskrit. Children learn. This NDA government said, you cannot continue in class 9. We don't allow. Only Sanskrit compulsorily everybody has to learn. In that case, it is of no use. Unless you provide a continuity, strengthen the skill, nothing is going to happen. It is a very good system. If you go to Australia, if you go to Europe or other thing, vocational training is an integral part of any formal education. But there are certain apprehension. One is about the continuity. Second one, whether class 6 child is mentally prepared to do this type of vocational training or not. Is it too early or should we introduce at class 9? It's a debate is going on. But this policy proposes that class 6, 7, 8 will have 15 compulsory courses. Then the next question is, what happened to the boards? Many asked, Father, what will happen? You may not know, at present in India, there are 60 boards which are at work, 60. What happened to this board? Like you have CBSE, ICSE, you have Rajasthan board, state boards, then you have IB, International Baccalaureate, then you have the Cambridge School, etc. Like this, we have 60 boards there. What I see is that the boards will continue to exist. Today, CBSE is one of the powerful board because they have got under their umbrella more than 23,000 schools. ICSE is a rather weak board because they have only 3,000 members. But what is going to happen is, most of the role played by these boards are going to be taken away or minimized. And one central agency is going to do major work, like for example, the curriculum. What is going to be the curriculum which is going to be taught in our school? And the pedagogy, the learning teaching outcome. The role of these boards going to be only conducting examination and awarding certificate. Whether it is a right move or wrong move, we don't know. I'll critique it, but I'm just, if you read the pages very closely, this is what I get, that the board will continue to exist, but the roles played, like for example, CBSE tells us, this is the curriculum going to be this academic year. No more after 2025. We will see whether it is a right move or wrong move. Another concept, my dear fathers, sisters, the concept of school complex, very biblical, fantastic. Jesus said, all the fathers, sisters, every Christian is called to serve. I have come to serve. A service is a basic criteria of Christian. Very good. So we build schools, bring in a lot of infrastructure. Here what happened according to this concept? It is not mainly meant for a city school. It is more for semi-rural and rural school, where one particular school or some school are well equipped in terms of resources, building, etc. There are other schools in the periphery, government and non-government school, who are not so gifted in terms of resources, they are poor infrastructure. So they will be amalgamated with that school which is capable of providing, and they will form what they call the concept of school complex. And they will share the resources, training of teachers, expertise, etc. It sounds very good. You tell me, will anybody will do that? Even the most pious person on earth, who believes completely in the providence of God, after spending 15 crore or 20 crore, developing infrastructure, etc., will you completely selflessly say, come anytime, use my complex. You want my ground, please take. You want my teachers, please take. It's not going to happen. Why I am saying this? Let us look at it from another perspective. What happens to the responsibility of the government? Are you trying to escape from a responsibility? I'll be critiquing later, but I'm bringing this dimension because you need to be aware of school complex. This CBSE tried this. Somehow they couldn't succeed. And they are bringing this. This is going to happen, clustering together. What way it is going to bring? It sounds very good theoretically, but practically, in my opinion, it is a government shedding its own responsibility and trying to pass on the buck to a private school. We will see later. And also they are talking about philanthropic school. You remember today we have
12 hours.
We have a lot of private schools today. But let me tell you today, a lot of private schools are commercializing the education because there is no proper system to control. It is true, certain autonomy has to be given. And similarly, in this national education policy also, they talk about a lot of autonomy, but I don't see how you can control the commercializing aspect. They are saying, we will find out which private school is philanthropic in nature, which private school is not. But who determines? They can give you 10,000 rupees and make a certificate. Yes, we are philanthropic in our approach. So I have a feeling that commercializing instead of curtailing is going to increase more and more by bringing what you call the private philanthropic school. Who is philanthropic? Maybe a Catholic school trying with all sincerity, trying to do your best. You may not be philanthropic because you have not paid money. So a lot of commercialization may take place. I will comment upon this point during my critique. And they're talking about midday meal. So far, the midday meal was confined to the meal between the classes, sometime before noon. It is true. Some children come without breakfast because they cannot afford to. So it was a good thing. RTE brought in midday meal. Now they say it should include breakfast also. And they said the breakfast, the menu should be, one of the menus should be boiled egg. And then they said this midday meal scheme is extended up to class 12, from age to 12. My question is very good. It is poor oriented. When you don't have enough money to pay back as a reimbursement to the private school on RTE, the children who have been admitted under RTE, how can you, in my opinion, it's utopian. There are no proper midday meal given to even the government school. And even that money is pocketed by someone. So instead of plucking holes and trying to rectify some mistake, you are adding more. Breakfast should be included, boiled egg should be included, and it should extend from age 3, that's nursery to class 12. You couldn't handle 1 to 8, and how you are going to look after the vast sector up to 12 is a big question. Then the open and distant learning for those who cannot attend physical school is a good idea. It's a good idea because some of our rural children, even today we are talking about online, we have very few children in the rural sector who can afford a laptop or an Android mobile phone. So for such cases, promoting distance learning is a good thing. And then curriculum will be reduced only to the core concept. They are going to reduce unwanted subjects. I'll talk about, the next slide we'll talk about. Then teachers for music, art, language, physical education will be shared among the school complex. This is important, please pay attention. So far, only the colleges were accredited by an accreditation agency under UGC. According to this bill, this policy, by 2025 or 2030, all the schools will be audited and accredited. You will be given accreditation. And who will do that? The State School Standard Authority. And they will find out whether you are a philanthropy, whether you are following the norm. The SOPs will be set by this authority and you will be accredited. So which means we need to maintain the standard of our school. I was talking about, people ask, why do you want to bring a reduction in the...
Father Rakesh Baria, kindly mute yourself.
Yes, Father Ravi, you can unmute and speak. Father Ravi, please unmute your microphone.
Okay, now
Yes,
you can
Father.
hear.
Yes, Father.
Right.
Yeah.
And if people ask, why do you want to bring reduction in the curriculum? Because they said, if you want to promote the three important, please pay attention to that: critical thinking, interactive classes and interactive ability, and experiential learning. If you want to promote these, you have to get rid of unwanted subject. That is why we want to bring only the core essentials of the curriculum and the all others to be removed. Then this we already talked about. Multilingualism and the power of language. They said, as far as possible, the medium of instruction until grade 5 should be in the mother tongue. I like to tell you, we Jesuits, Xavier's group made an attempt in 1980s, Bishop and all will remember, because we realized the formative period, the foundation has to be laid through mother tongue. The ability to express, the ability to articulate, the proficiency in terms of terminologies and vocabulary is much better. But unfortunately, our Indians are not willing to buy that. Immediately, some of our alumni went on agitation. They said Xavier's has become a Hindi medium, bilingual is not acceptable, etc. And we, even enlightened Jesuits, due to this pressure, we also gave into the pressure. We reverted back to English medium. In my opinion, please remember, it's a very good suggestion. It's a very good suggestion. Unfortunately, our mindset has to change. That's why other day, Yogendra Yadav, the former companion of Kejriwal, he said this policy will never take place because the politician children, they will be the first one who violate this law. They will never put their children in such a school. They will always want the so-called English medium school right from nursery. So, but in my opinion, the proposal of this NEP is a very encouraging, and we should seriously think about this. At the same time, I am not underestimating the importance of English. It's important. You cannot ignore English today. I can tell you today, my dear fathers, sisters, today many of our Indians are able to get a decent job outside. Even I like to take an example of the British cabinet. The British cabinet, led by Johnson, there are three important ministers of Indian origin because of their ability to communicate, the expertise in their language, in their ability to get across their opinion. They have learned good English. They speak like Britishers. Similarly, in America, why some of our Indians are holding top position. So English cannot be underestimated, though there is a group of people I will talk about later. They are trying to underestimate the importance of English. They are mistaken. Then they cannot be called a global citizen. You can call them in a way anti-national, because if you want to develop our nation, we should be open to one of the languages which is a powerful medium is in English today. So through these, they are not underestimating English. At the same time, learning the fundamentals in our mother tongue, in my opinion, it is a powerful tool. Just a couple of minutes, I like to discuss about the chapter 5 deals with the importance of teachers. As Father was saying in the morning first session, sorry, Mr. Jonas was saying, that if you want this policy to become a success story, besides all others, who are the important stakeholders and partners? It is the teachers. They can either shape up or destroy. They can contribute or they can destroy the education system. So teachers play a very pivotal role. That is why this draft gives very important some of the suggestion. I like to go through that. The first one is what they talk about, merit-based scholarship. What are they talking about? You see, some of us have worked in rural. I worked 10 years in Bihar and all. We know that some of the rural children are so talented, intelligent. After classing 12, they go on to take up some vocational training. We ask them, why you don't take up teaching as your profession? Because they have no resources. They cannot afford to do a B.Ed degree. And so in the bargain, what has happened? We have lost very good teachers, very good brain. Even today, I can tell you some of the best brains are in UP and Bihar. You may not agree with me, but if you live there, you will know. The best mathematicians, some of the best scientists are from Bihar and UP. Unfortunately, due to lack of resources, due to backwardness, they couldn't come up in their life. That's why they are suggesting what we call the merit-based scholarship and through and 4-year integrated B.Ed program, and also giving them accommodation, etc. And another change, my dear teachers, please pay attention. So far, the teacher eligibility test was needed only from class 1 to 8 or 10. That's all. Only for PRT and TGT. Now, as per the policy, you have to have this teacher eligibility test up to class 12. All those who are teaching right from the beginning till class 12. So this will be conducted by either a local level, or there will be an agency called National Testing Agency. CBSE will not conduct anymore. National Testing Agency will conduct such tests. Both are equivalent. You have to pass that test. Then only you'll be eligible to teach in a school, no matter whether you are a PRT, TGT, or PGT. That's a change. This is what I have written here. For subject teachers, suitable TET or NTA test score in the corresponding subject, etc. And another important dimension, I'm very happy about it. What happened? Some of the private school, also government school, I'm not sure, that a lot of schools borrow teachers on a principle called hire and fire principle. Like you hire them for some time, after some time you say, I don't need, you can go. What we call para teachers. Teachers on short-term contract. And according to this policy, such approach will not be allowed. You will be recruited on a regular, so that there is a seriousness. There is a job, what you call stability. Otherwise, what happened? Teachers are not sure of that, and there is uncertainty and excitement, anxiety, etc. As a result, they are not able to bring out the best. So this is a good thing in terms of recruitment and development. I talked about it, children learning. This also I talked about. And some of the teachers will be incorporated into managing committee meeting, etc. Pay attention to this. You know, some of the schools, what happened in the government school, the teachers do everything else except the teaching. It is very true. When there is a census, they will go for a census duty. If there is a local election or a state election, they will go for election duty. In some school, it is so pathetic. They want to pocket the money given to the cook. So they take the money and they themselves start cooking midday meals. Look at the tragedy. So this bill says such nonsense will not be anymore tolerated. So if you are a teacher assigned for teaching, you will be completely. Let us see whether it will work or not. But a lot of malpractice is going on. As a result, some of our government schools continue to be in a very, very pathetic situation because of lack of commitment and lack of honesty among our teachers and other stakeholders. This is important. My dear teachers, some fathers also here, I like to make a submission here. Teaching is a profession. Once you become a permanent, it gets saturated. We don't get a desire to update ourselves, to attend some program and update myself with regard to my subject. We know we are permanent, nothing will happen. So we follow some of the old note, same terminology last 25 years, I'm using it. No more. You cannot. You'll be considered as you are an outdated, irrelevant teacher. Today, the time demands you need to be update yourself. You need to become a computer savvy. You become technology savvy. You have to become. There is no way. So they are proposing what we call 50 hours of CPD opportunities every year. That means continuous professional development. Later on, I'll be talking about, you see, that is how seniority will no more be a criteria for your promotion. You cannot claim, I have, like we have in the under 7th Pay Commission, we have modified career progressive, the CAPs, assured career progression. Now it is known as modified assured career MACP. After in a career span, you can have 3 times, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Previously, it was based on seniority. I have completed 10 years, please upgrade me to. No more. You will be given an exam. You will have to undergo an examination after 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. If you pass, you are eligible for the next grade. Otherwise, you remain the same. Very good thing. And this is applicable for principals also. I'm very happy. So even as leaders, unless we update, inspire our teachers, they will not do. So this continuous professional development is a very good proposal for our teachers. That's why I was talking about a robust merit-based tenure will be the criteria for your promotion, and seniority will not be your any more criteria. And there will be a parity in service condition across the state. So now you see CBSE is one scale, ICSE another scale, state board, all those parity, disproportionate approach will be removed. There will be a parity, means equality in terms of scale for all the teachers all over the country, which is a very good thing, irrespective of the board. And they are also saying, and you remember some of the teachers, more applicable to teachers, you join a school as a PRT, though you have a post-graduation, that time you didn't have vacancy. Later on, you realize there is a vacancy, so you desire for that vacancy. Which means what the policy says is that such type of aspiration is not healthy for a person. So if you are applying yourself for a teaching post in a school institution as a PRT, remain a PRT, update yourself and passionately involve yourself. Don't aspire. So they are saying this policy strongly discourages jumping from one category to another category. You may be eligible, but you make a choice before you join, which is good. And some people may not agree with that, but the policy is proposing this. But at the same time, certain amount of vertical mobility, the teachers who are capable of academic leadership will be given position in school and school complex, etc. Okay. The national professor standard will be set up by 2022, and this is what they will conduct. This agency will conduct those examinations for your promotion, etc. Okay, this I already talked about, and every school will have a special educators, which I already talked about. So these are the three type of B.Ed program will be available after 2030. 4-year intake. After 2030, standalone B.Ed colleges will not exist. They have to be part of the multidisciplinary colleges. Which means if you want to be a teacher, you need to have a 4-year integrated B.Ed. That means you can choose after class 12 that I want to do 4-year integrated B.Ed program. Suppose you are a graduate, you have done, then the 2-year program, B.Ed program will be available, but it will be given by a multidisciplinary college, not by a standalone B.Ed college. And similarly, suppose you have done a 4-year degree program, then you will be eligible for 1-year B.Ed. That also will be given by a multidisciplinary college. These things will be available even in future. Okay, this is okay. Now I come to, I have 5 more minutes to go. Just a little, because very important. How the school education leads to the higher education, the connectivity, the interconnectivity is important. So let me, in 5 or 6 slides, I will sum up the higher education. Teachers, remember, so far we had, though there are different categories, we can, the university usually we can categorize to 3 parts. One is the centralized university, like Jawaharlal Nehru, Aligarh Muslim University, Banaras Hindu University, funded by central government. President is a chancellor, you know that. And they are completely funded. Then you have a state level universities, okay, where governor becomes the chancellor, then vice chancellors take over and funded by the state government. The third category, the deemed to be university. Previously, it was known as a deemed university. Now they have changed the term, deemed to be universities under UGC direct administration. Now they are saying all such categories will be done away. We will have only 3 categories. They are research universities, teaching universities, degree awarding, and autonomous colleges. That's all, 3 categories. So you have to fall into this category, nothing else. By 2030 or 35, all the colleges have to become one of these categories. The first 2 categories, research, university, and teaching, the capacity of intake students is up to 25,000, starting with 5,000, funded by central government. There is no problem. Whereas the third category, degree awarding autonomous colleges, some of them will be funded by state government, but all others have to find your own resources. So you have to collect your own. That is where some of the institution will become commercialized institution. And what is more important is I'll be talking about, but they need to have minimum 3,000 students. So all those colleges are having less than 3,000 children will be shut by 2030. You need to have. It is going to have a lot of implication in the rural sector. I'll be talking about later. This has to be implemented by 2030. And the board of governors will be appointed by each institution to govern. Even the principals or even the vice chancellor, suppose even your own university, you cannot appoint your own because you are a minority institution. No, that right is taken away. And you have to present the candidate. They will go through the formal procedure. If they qualify, if they pass through, they are appointed, otherwise they are rejected. So they will make all the appointment, including the leader. This is where the Article 31, the privilege given to us through Constitution for the minorities is undermined here in this provision. And this is what I talked about. Remember, in my initial remark, I said the general reservation is removed. Only merit-based reservation and scholarship will be available to students. My question is, how many children from OBC, SC, ST, Dalit background will be eligible for reservation, merit-based scholarship? So you see one side, though I'll be critiquing later, I just want to make a mention. One side, Prime Minister talked about, we want to include everybody. We want to make education accessible. Is it a way you make education accessible? That is why later I'll be telling you, it is not national education policy. There is a national exclusion policy. Or if somebody called it national elusive policy. You are trying to elude. That means you appear to be saying something, but in reality, you are meaning something. So it is, in my opinion, it is wrong. We will critique it later, but keep this in mind. And the medical field and legal cell is kept out of this umbrella. They will have their own certain autonomy, except that they say at the end of 4th year MBBS degree, there will be exam called the exit exam, which will make you eligible for your postgraduate program. That is a new thing itself. Then there will be only one single regulator for Higher Education Commission. At present, there are 16 regulatory bodies in India, 16, 1-6. And it will be made to one. And it will be known as a Higher Education Commission of India. And they have got this, the major parent will have the 4 siblings. What are the 4 siblings? One is for standard setting, is known as a GEC. And the second one is for funding. That is known as HEGC. And the third is for accreditation, is known as National Accreditation Council, third sibling. And fourth sibling will be regulation. That is the National Higher Education Regulatory Council. So like UGC, AICT, All India Council for Technical Education, National Council for Teacher Education, all will be phased out. You will have only one regulatory body, what known as NAS. So this under these 4, under this main, you saw the previous Higher Education Commission of India, we will have these 4 bodies will be controlling the entire. We will see later. Is it a right approach? Sitting in Delhi, can you administer? Can you think what is needed in Northeast? What is needed in Jammu Kashmir? That is why I'm telling you the concurrent characteristic of this present education system, minimizing or downplaying is going to be a very, very negative, bring negative impact on our education system. Keep that in mind. And note, public-private higher education institutions shall be treated on par with this regulatory regime and governed by this same set of norms for accreditation and academic standard as well. And they talk about 4-year multidisciplinary UGC program. Suppose you complete only 1 year, you will get a diploma. If you complete only 2 years, you will get advanced diploma. If you manage to complete 3 years, you will get a bachelor degree. After 4 years, you get a degree with research. Please take note, only that last category children will be eligible for any further studies in terms of research, etc. That is why they have done away with the MPhil program. MPhil will not be anymore. So if you have completed the 4-year from a multidisciplinary college, you will be eligible for further study, a research-based examination. And another suggestion is, which is good and positive, you will see later, high-performing Indian universities will be encouraged to set up campuses in other countries. So we have the regulatory body. They will analyze whether you are falling under category of high-performing Indian university. Then they will allow you to go out and establish your campus in some of the top leading like Oxford, Fordham, and some of the big universities in the world. Similarly, the top 100 universities in the world will be allowed to come to India to set up their campuses in our existing university campuses. What way it is going to make our higher education, global education, a global hub, we will see. And there are a lot of apprehension among the intellectual. Even that happen, who are going to be the beneficiaries? Will rural children get access to enter into these campuses? Will a child, a tribal family, a child from Uttarakhand or Jharkhand will be able to have access to that? That is why serious about it. This is for whom? Though we are promoting global outlook, it's true. You know, I like to draw your attention, those who are following the survey. Last few years, we do not see some of our IITs and IIMs in the top 100 universities, the best universities in the world. Where a small country like Singapore and Dubai, small countries, some of their universities are topping in the list. So what is the need of to strengthen our universities, make our IIMs, Ahmedabad, Lucknow and Bangalore, IIT Chennai, IIT Mumbai, find out what are some of the shortcomings. And it is a need that we need to bring universities from outside. Is it going to serve the purpose? Except Indian Institute of Science, Dr. Jonas will know from Bangalore, that has come in some of the top best universities in the world. Except that, I don't see. So this approach again, is it an inclusive approach or exclusive approach? We will critique that. The seventh proposed higher education is a very good thing. They say the gross enrollment ratio is right now 26%. We want to make it 50% by 2035 by consolidating, expanding, and improving, which means at least 3.5 crore new students will be added to higher education if this takes place. And I'm just closing I will keep up my time, just 2 more minutes. And they will also promote open distance learning. And there is a suggestion, at least in the next, within the period of 5 years, this among the three, type 1 to 3, at least one institute will be in every district. We don't know whether it will be a research-based institute or a teaching-based or college will with autonomy who will be nature, affiliating nature, etc. We don't know. The dream is good. And also they talk about what we call fast track mode, which means children who are gifted, who are capable of completing their studies in terms of credit faster, they will be allowed to do that. This mode is available. The professors who are teaching in universities will know. In America and all, normal student, if he takes 3 years, the others can finish it in 2 years. So that provision is there. And the teacher-student ratio is in the school, they are suggesting 1:30. Now they are suggesting 1:10 to 120. So with this, I conclude my first part. Let me just conclude. Fathers and sisters, Bishop also is there, I hope. I have brought before you the historical development, what are the contributing significant moments in the post-independent India, which contributed to our education, what it is now, which enabled us to bring this NEP 2020. And what are some of the significant changes being proposed or envisioned in this policy in terms of school education, in terms of higher education. Because it's very important. Because before we critique, so in the afternoon, when we come back at 3 o'clock, what I will do is I'm going to critique. Tomorrow, Father may do in a detailed manner, but I will keep up certain perspective and critique both school education and higher education. So that will open our mind and hearts and to see what are some of the hidden agenda. What are some of the unspoken words, unwritten lines in the policy, and of which we need to be aware, we need to become a little more vigilant, and what way we can play proactive role in helping the government to implement this policy. So with this, I conclude my presentation. Over to.
Thank you, Reverend Father. Now we shall have the question answer session for 10 to 15 minutes. So participant.
May know there is there a need for this now?
Okay, Father, we can do this after the third session.
Yeah, that is better. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend Father Ravi, for your excellent insight and ideas on historical background of NEP. and also the journey back to post-independent era. You also taught about significant reformations in school education and higher education on NEP 2020. Also the pictorial representation of existing structure of education system and new academic structure was very well explained. Thank you so much, Father. I'm sure we all are benefited by your rich insights of this. Thank you so much. And we will be meeting in our third session. Dear participants, we are winding up with our morning session. The afternoon session will start after the lunch break. So I request all the participants to be at the platform at 3 p.m. Sharp 3 p.m.
2:55.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Minu.
Thank you, Father.
And Father.
Thank you, Father.
You were wonderful.
Yeah,
You were wonderful.
Thank you, Father.
John, it was really very clear and hardly any disturbance. And I think you have done a very good job. Surely we'll meet you again, and for a critical evaluation, we'll continue at 3 o'clock. Thank you, Father. So, friends, we shall meet again once again. Have a good day, have a good lunch, and a short rest, and come back by 3 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you, Bishop.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
and
so
same
much.
to you,
Thank
Father.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father.
अब देखिए